Now I call upon Amal Thomas to deliver the welcome speech.
Good morning, all. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, yes.
Good morning, all. I feel great privilege in getting a chance for delivering a welcome note of this program. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. A. Venkatakrishna, a very well-known VFX artist, colorist, digital restoration specialist. P.C. Sriram's Vanam Vasapadave was one of his major films, worked as a colorist. He has also worked in various other films also. I would like to welcome A. Venkatakrishna sir to this webinar with lots of proud and happiness. Next, I would like to welcome Sunil Kumar sir. He's also a retired photographer from ISRO. Welcome sir to this webinar.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome Professor M. Vijay Kumar, the director of our department. He takes a lots of efforts in giving the maximum results to the students of our department. Welcome sir to this webinar. Next, I would like to welcome Father Sobi Kanalil, the HOD of our department. He can be called as the backbone of our department. His vibrant nature and hardworking mentality makes our department strongest among other departments of our college. Welcome, Father. Next, I would like to welcome all our teaching staffs who were always with us in all our academic and non-academic activities. Welcome, teachers. Last but not least, I would like to welcome to this webinar. I hope that your active participation make this webinar a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Amal. Mr. P.V. Sunil Kumar, the former head of photography and videography, ISRO, who is already familiar to us, is here. I welcome him to introduce our guest. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here for the webinar organized by the Department of Communication and Media Studies, um, Marian's College, Autonomous Kutika. And I'm very fortunate to introduce Sri Venkatakrishnan also, who is a very seasoned graphic designer, online editor, a 3D animator, VFX artist, and a colorist from Chennai. We all will wonder what is this today's topic has got any relevance to the cinema. But recently, when I was attending a master class by a very famous cinematographer, one of the participants put a question to the uh, cinematographer, asking him what are the vital responsibilities of a cinematographer today, that too in the with the digital era. So the cinematographer replied that the yesteryear's cameraman need to worry just about camera optics, the camera movement, lighting, and the color concepts for the lighting and the scene settings and all. But the present day cameraman, he has to do so many other things which you all know, HDR, LUT, so many new terminologies we are coming to here, color grading, DI, all these new terminologies which we are hearing. So, in such a context, in the present era of digital technology and the digital film, with D cinema having its DCI package and other things, it's a necessity for everybody who are in the film field and even otherwise in the television world should know something about the color concepts and theory. So now let me come to introducing Mr. Vengi. He is commonly called as Mr. Bengi among the film industry, though his name is Venkatakrishna. After his education in Viscom and the diploma in interior design, Sri Venkatakrishnan, he joined as a cleanup artist in two dimension 2D animation. I mean, two dimensional animation in 1998. And in 2004, he was an online editor at Fine Cut Studio, Chennai, and during which time he has got himself associated with Mr. P.C. Swira, a renowned cinematographer, and that was a very turning point in his life. And later, he was working with real image media technologies in multidisciplines as a specialist, a solution expert for color grading, restoration, and 3D animator. Apart from this, he is an efficient instructor and trainer in imparting the knowledge and workflow of the digital cinema processes. Most of the all industry professionals have got an in-depth training from Mr. Venkatakrishnan. So he has contributed to more than 25 films in various capacities, mostly as VFX supervisor, digital math artist, and colorist. Okay, he has got a very good list of some nearly around 50 more films to his credit, but some of them very which we know, I can tell is one of the very famous song, the Roja Roja song in the film Kadal Ardina, taken around the Taj Mahal, was a very one of his remarkable VFX contribution. And in Malayalam too, he has worked for Ravana Prabhu, where as a digital math artist, where Mr. Mohanlal was in dual roles, and CID Musa in 2003, and in Media Rendilum, again, where Kavya Madhavan was in dual role, he worked as a digital math artist. And he has worked with very famous directors, A.R. Murugadas, S.J. Surya, P.C. Srira, and the list is endless. And now a few personal words on Sri VK from my side. My association with Sri VK started when I was asked to do a small DTS digital widescreen film, and he right from the beginning he was my he was my editor, he was my animator, and he was my VFX for that film. So I really appreciated his dedication towards this art, his one profession. So it's now my pleasure to welcome Sri VK on behalf of all the participants to this session. I also thank the professors, faculty members, and the Department of Communication and Media Studies and the management of Marian's College for organizing such a good seminar. Thank you. And over to Father Sobi.
Thank you so much, sir. Parvati.
Thank you, sir. Now it's time to welcome our resource person, Mr. Venkata Krishna, the VFX supervisor, colorist, and restoration artist, Chennai. He will be talking about the basic concepts of color, color science, color measurement, decision strategies, and so on. I once again welcome him to begin the class. Sir, please.
Thank you all. It is really an honor to present this workshop, and I thank the Pariam College and Mr. Sunil who has introduced me to this workshop. Let me share the screen.
Excuse me, sir, we cannot see you.
Yeah, I'm just getting the slide. A few seconds. Are you able to see my slide?
No.
Just Are you able to see the screen?
Noted, sir. Yeah, now it's coming, sir. Yeah. Now
Yes.
it's visible.
Yeah. So this workshop is about color theory and color concepts in modern cinema. There will be a bit of basics which we can go through, and in between, if anyone wants to ask a question, you can ask also. So color. So color plays a very, very important role in our life. See, whatever we see and whatever we perception which we take in is how we deliver our emotions also. So color can sway your thinking by taking any actions and can cause any reactions. It can irritate or even soothe your eye, can raise your blood pressure, and it can also increase your appetite. So visual color perception is influenced by three factors: the light source, the object, and the observer or the eye. So this is how color is seen. The apple reflects the red and absorbs other colors. That's why you can see, the eye can see the reflected light as color, which is the red color. So basically we need light, objects to absorb and reflect its own color, and eye which deciphers the reflected light as color.
Bengi, sorry for the interruption. Can you switch on your
Yes, sir.
camera? Yeah, because a lot more people, the participants are very much interested in seeing our Bengi.
I will, sir. I will show my face in the end. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, please proceed. Sorry for the
okay.
interruption.
So no problem. The surface of an object reflects some colors and absorbs everything. So that's why a black object reflects no light, and it's black as it is black, and a white object reflects nearly everything. That's why it bleaches everything, or you can see only a singular color. Color has three main attributes: the hue, saturation, and the brightness. Hue refers to as a pure color. So without referring to whether it is dark or light, or how huge it is or how bright it is. When people speak of color, it is the hue which they are speaking to or referring to. Saturation, in the digital world it is called as chroma, is measured of the purity of the color, or how sharp or how vibrant it looks or how dull it looks. So it can be converted into a black and white image by reducing the value of 0, or increasing the purity of the same color by increasing it to 100 or the maximum value. This is the basic representation of what saturation and without saturation is. Brightness is also called the luminance, or the how darkness, or the lightness, or the luminance. So areas or evenly colored object is direct light have higher brightness than the areas of the shadows. So brightness can be measured in these, whether it is dark, whether it is neutral, or whether it is bright. The color wheel. Sir Isaac Newton developed the first circular diagram of colors in 1666. Sir Isaac Newton's work with white light led him to discovery of the visible spectrum of light. The term VIBGYOR was a result of Newton's discovery. Here are other scientists of the 17th century who also created a number of color wheels. This is the standard color wheel. The primary colors, yellow, red, and blue, are the top of any color structure. That's because you can think of three primaries as the original parents of all the future generation of colors. The three secondary colors, orange, purple, and green, are the children of the three primary colors. The remaining six colors are called as the tertiary colors, like the grandchildren of the primary colors. Color theory teaches that each of the tertiary colors is the result of one primary color mixed with one of its nearest secondary color. So therefore, we end up with a new color somewhere in between. So okay, we saw the primary colors, but in the digital world, it is represented as RGB. So what is the difference between RYB and RGB? RYB is a subtractive pigment and RGB is an additive light. Red, yellow, blue is a color coding system of paint, of any physical paint or an emulsion. When you add three colors, what you are doing is adding the amount of colors that the paint will absorb. The color scheme is known as subtractive color scheme because when you add different colors, you are actually subtracting the amount of light in the original paint and can reflect. So you are taking away its own property. And eventually, when you mix all colors, you create black. RGB is the way we see light. So when light comes from a lamp or the sun, it travels in RGB. This color scheme is known as additive color scheme because when you add lights together, you are only adding to a spectrum of light. The final result is the color white. This theory can be easily worked out when you can mix any color, watercolor, oil color, or even oil paint. If you mix all colors, you will get black. And one by one, if you add, you will see the other secondary colors coming in and finally resulting in black. In RGB, you can take a white flashlight, color it with color paper, red, green, and blue. And if everything converges in the same point, you will see a white light. So color also behaves in relation with other colors. See, compare the contrast effects of color backgrounds in the same red square. Red appears more brilliant against the black background because it has more contrast with orange, and red appears lifeless with orange. And it shows a brilliant or a vibrant color as vibrant in against blue. And you can also see the red square appears larger on black and in other colors because it is in high contrast with black, so it seems bigger. But in all the four color shades, red remains as the same singular size, but amongst other colors which is placed behind it, it shows different color contrasts. So even in the same family of colors, you see the small purple rectangle on the left appears to have a red purple tinge when compared to the small purple rectangle on the right. Observing the effect of colors with each other is a starting point of understanding the relativity of color. These might look at very basics, but these are the color values or color properties you should understand and execute it when whatever you are shooting or whatever you are compositing, and these will help you to understand how each color works with other colors. Tints, shades, and tones. The tint is basically simply any color which white is added. Process of lightens and desaturates the hue or reduces the color. Shade is the opposite of tint, where we add black and any hue found in the color wheel, which processes darkness and the hue and creates more intense color, and finally ending it to black. Tone. Tone is created by added white and black, which is gray. Any color that is grayed down is considering it as toned down or toning down, or a tone. A color space is a range of colors. Editing or manipulating color is balancing equal elements of RGB values and also the hue or the saturation in the image. An RGB color space can be simply interpreted as all possible colors made from 3 colors, red, green, and blue. This is the basic color science. This is a chromacity diagram which shows you the full spectrum of light and colors. The human eye can see between the spectrum of 380 to 700 nanometers, ultraviolet to infrared. The triangle portion of the spectrum is a range of colors that a TV can capture. So you see the value of the television triangle and the value of the human eye is very wide. Here we see the different color spaces with TV and film systems. DCI P3 comes under the color space of film. Rec 709 comes for broadcast and HD television. Rec 2020, now anything digital content from YouTube to Netflix, it goes to Rec 2020. You can see the D65 point is the white point, which represents daylight, and approximately to 6500 Kelvin. Any questions yet? Because we'll be going deeper into color space and color calibration and others. Or am I going a little fast? Sunil sir, is it fine to continue?
Sunil sir, your mic is muted.
It's going very fine, and you are starting from the very basics of color theory. Nice. And okay, at this point of time, there may not be any questions from the participants because they would have been instructed to raise their hand only and add it on to the chat box. And,
sure.
Some of them, their mics and all also are muted for handling the better frequency and bandwidth.
Okay. Sure, but please add in your post your questions in the chat box so that we can get back to it at the end.
Yes.
Thank you. So choosing the right video color space. So whenever you shoot, I personally believe that you should shoot it in 10-bit or above, or whatever the maximum the camera should handles. So working in a wide gamut of color space helps you to counter all unexpected or expected output standards. And you should have a monitor calibrated to match it. So whatever your output, I prefer a calibrated monitor while on shoot also, so that I will see what I'm shooting and what is the color spectrum which I am in shooting to. If cinema is one of your requirements, you will have to work in DCI P3. For HD and HD broadcast, you should have minimum of a Rec 709 and a maximum of a Rec 2020. Rec stands for recommended color. Choosing the right video color space. Whatever the color space you are working on, there should be a color management system intended to your output format. This meaning setting up your working environment according to your standards and calibrated all displays. This simply means that if you are just going for broadcast, you should minimum have a color space value of Rec 709, which all the HD televisions have. And your working monitor should also carry the same color space so that there won't be any difference of the content when you broadcast it and you edit or do any kind of color manipulation. Understanding scopes. Whenever you are shooting, each and every camera has its own scopes where you can measure the luminance value and the color values of whatever the content you are shooting. There are a lot of color scopes, and we will be seeing some of them. The video scopes are the best consistent images to maintain the values, because each camera will come in a different color balance or a white balancing or any kind of manipulation, or it might be different from each sensor. So the best is to keep a color chart and measure the colors and the luminance value and start shooting. Two of the most important video scopes are the vector scope and the waveform monitor. Vector scope is used to measure the color information, and the waveform, the brightness or the luminance of the image. The waveform monitor is used to evaluate the brightness of the image, regardless of whatever color it may be. The scale of waveform monitor is 0 to 100 IRE. With modern televisions and displays, and especially now each and every monitor comes with a HDR display also, it is possible to exceed 100 IRE, but it is safer to keep it within the range of 0 to 100. The waveform produces an abstract version of your image from left to right, making it easier to refer the brightness in specific areas of the image instantly. Here you can see two extremes. Here the values are going beyond 100, where you can see the color range is clipped, or it is being like when you see a lot of brightness in the sky, you won't have any information, it will be white. Or in sometimes when you shoot, you will see a gray patch on different colors, which will end in no colors or no information of the particular tone. If you keep the values in between from 0 to 100, you will have all the values and you can manipulate it further in your post. Vector scope has two circles, one for 75 targets and 100 percentage. And 75 is percentage with you, if you have it within that range, it will be good for broadcast safe area. And 100 is everything where you will get even more vibrant colors in your internet or OTT platforms. You can see two intersecting lines across also. If you want to analyze any particular tone or color, you can pick the color and adjust your chroma values. For instance, skin tone falls on the line between the yellow and the red. So you can increase your saturation of your skin tone looking at this. Histogram is also a very important tool where this analyzes your images and displays in percentage of luminance values across the screen. Most of the cameras, even the stream camera has this. Unlike the waveform, this display brightness vertically from 0 to 1 volt. The histogram displays luminance horizontally, darkest as in 0 to the at the left and brightest to the 100 to the right. This display also has a weakness. It does not show you which parts of your image are dark or bright. It roughly shows the percentage of the image, whether it is how it is also exposed. Adjusting your exposure to make sure most of the information isn't clipped at the right or lost in the shadows to the left of the display helps you. You can, if you have Photoshop has a very good luminance or a color range value display and a histogram. You can simply check by adjusting the histogram or the brightness values. You will see immediately where the shadows are clipped or your brightness is exceeding. This footage was shot in a very good exposure, keeping both values of the highlights and the shadows within the range of the luminance values. So when it is graded, you still see the luminance values are still within the range, and we are not losing any kind of information on the shadows and the highlights. So whenever you shoot within the range, whether it is log or linear footage or raw footage, you can get a very good picture by manipulating any kind of, whatever kind of color manipulations you do in post. Using these scopes to measure it makes great tools of range. In fact, relying solely on your monitor can result in an unusable image also. So make sure, and many of the productions you won't be getting, and they'll be in different conditions of light. So whenever you're shooting it through your camera, it is better to go through any of these waveform or the histogram displays and adjust your content. Coming back to film. So before going into digital media and broadcast media, you should understand how traditional film workflows were done. The original camera negative, which comes from the camera, is sent for processing and is developed as rush prints, a duplicate, and then it is given for offline editing. When the negative is cut, it is also given for processing audio and optical effects, where optical visual effects were done. Then it was given to intermediate lab grade. It also goes to a telecine process, where a digital grade is done for broadcast content or video content, and an answer print is made. So answer print is the first final print of your final film, which is going to the theater. So from this, they make multiple prints or how many hour prints for different theaters and duplicates. So your answer print will be the first print from which many duplicates are made and sent to theaters. So digital cinema workflow is very similar, where the data of the digital camera is first backed up and they are created as dailies, where the rush prints were made in the traditional film workflow. Here dailies are made, so each day whatever you are shooting, it will be backed up and made as a proxy file and being sent to the editor to do an offline edit. So from the editor's table, it goes to as an EDL format or a composition, and then given to DI or a digital grade, where he aligns the content in its output format, 2K, 4K, or whatever the resolution was intended for. Then simultaneously it is given for VFX from the DI and to audio. Again, back and forth, these will go on. Then the final master will be created from the DI and given to two stages, one as a digital cinema distribution master and as a digital master for broadcast and OTT platforms. From the final digital cinema distribution master, it will be made as duplicates and sent to theaters along with a license file intended for each and every theater. Broadcast workflow. Here, broadcast workflow is a little more, we can say it is a little more, we have to make sure the content has to be, because when you shoot in a broadcast or a journalist or from a TV perspective, news channel perspective, you might get it as different kind of footages. Nowadays they also shoot from mobile phones. You might get content from mobile phones, different various cameras, multiple cameras in the same location. So all these will be converted as tapes or as a data format and ingested in a particular ingesting software and transcoded to a singular format. So this singular format will be the resultant whatever your intended output format for your broadcast file. They will have a mezzanine or a proxy format, a low resolution format, where in which the editors will look at it and there will be different kind of brushes. These are called rushes from different cameras. These will be aligned, which to use, which not to use, and then they'll be sent to the central storage. From there, they'll be created as individual stories in the editing timeline in the broadcast table, and again they'll be sent to audio and for visual effects for any manipulation. Then the output transcode format is again converted, and then digital delivery is made. There's a very important parallelly, there's an important role of an archive where the data will be stored, duplicated, converted as an archive format, and sent into a different storage. In broadcast, they will also move it to a different geographical location with a different duplicates. Whenever I shoot a film, or when I fix a workflow for a production, I usually take 2 backups of everyday rushes. One will be with the producer, and one will be immediately backed up in an LTO tape and will be moved to a different location. And one proxy will be given to the offline editing. Because whatever said and done, it is a physical element. The content can't be reshoot because it will be expensive to shoot for another day. DI. Digital intermediate, or DI, was originally intended as a replacement for film intermediates to create cinema release points. When a film is projected in theater, as I said, there is a process called the telecine, where they do a scan and put it as in a digibeta tape or a tape format and send it to broadcast for television channels. It is also known as a process of capturing digital images from film scanner or a digital camera and manipulating the color for theatrical release. The new term will be data intermediate, not digital intermediate, as all the images are in data format, and these, previously it was from a scanner, now it is from a chip or a hard disk. Then it is given for color grading, compositing, and high resolution universal master will be produced from that. Calibration, an important step in digital intermediate or color grading, as a calibrated monitor is mandatory to display any kind of artistic intent. A monitor color response needs to be measured and adjusted to the color space in which you are working. Color calibration is required for all devices throughout your workflow. If there is a specific color space which you are using in editing, the same color space should be given to the VFX artist and to the DI artist. Only if you do that, there will be a clean color managed workflow will be produced. A lookup table or a LUT. So whatever you are shooting nowadays, we will be getting it in a log format or a raw format. So to bring them to a viewable color spectrum, you need a LUT. Today, each and every camera has its own viewing devices and a LUTs inbuilt to assist your technician or the cinematographer. So even though when you are shooting in log, he will see how it will look if a color LUT is being produced, or how it will look on the color table or in your DI timeline. So usually they will have a Rec 709 LUT which will give you broadcast colors and see how the log image will look in a decent HD resolution monitor. Early digital intermediate process LUTs were the first step to emulate the look of negative processor. So why this LUT was created was based on the numbers and values of each and every film variant, like the codec, the Fuji. So these were the first LUTs. When you shoot something, so these values were taken from the film negative perception, like the codec 5223. So each LUT will have its encoded color space or a color value, which will be put on top of the content to emulate whether how it look in a color or a negative. But it can also type of look to cater your scene. It can also make, like how we do it in Photoshop when you have a sepia color tone or a black and white color tone. So it can also help you to bring in. So like the presets you have in Adobe Photoshop and in Lightroom, a simple example will be those presets are like, LUTs are like those presets which you use in Lightroom. And these are much more compliant to your broadcasting systems. So when you shoot, you'll always get a footage in 8-bit, 10-bit, Rec 709 or RAW format, 12-bit or a 16-bit. When you're shooting in greater than 8-bit, it's always equivalent to the higher bit type. But 16-bit should be perfect for 90% of any broadcast workflow. But 16-bit also produces huge resolution files, and you should be ready for storages equivalent to that. Maintain the highest color space when you shoot. If you are shooting RAW, you should also work in the natively specified color space, which means if you are shooting in Canon, Canon has its own color space or a LUT. So then it will be easier for you to manipulate that content which comes from the Canon camera. When you shoot in ARRI, you use ARRI's LUTs, which will help you to get more values. So you can mismatch, but there will be some degrade in quality if you use different kinds of LUTs. But that too can be, it is your perception. So you can use it as you please. But shooting in RAW and then coming back to Rec 709 or vice versa is not suitable, because if you are targeted for broadcast itself, you can anyway shoot in Rec 709 itself. You don't have to shoot in RAW and then come back to Rec 709, because your final output is going to be for YouTube or something, or just a HD television channel. It is easier for you to shoot Rec 709 because your files will be smaller, your workflow will be very simple, and whatever softwares or hardwares you use is going to be easier and cheaper to produce a final format in Rec 709. So decide what your output format is going to be, so your whole workflow will fall in place. You don't have to hire a costly red camera to hire it and get its own lenses and lights to shoot a YouTube video. You can simply shoot a YouTube video in your cell phone or a Canon camera and give your output necessary for it. RAW. In simple terms, RAW image format is data captured from the image sensor of the camera without any processing or very less processing. So the whatever you see, and it will also involve a lot of light spectrum. This image will have a very wide color gamut, and you can tune it to different kind of outputs. Purpose of raw image format is to save the captured information without minimum loss. So you will have a lot of depth, a lot of less manipulation. So the color, you will have a lot of color values, which you can manipulate for different kinds of output. A raw file consists of metadata, a header information, the camera sensor information, miscellaneous information from the camera like the camera's version or the firmware of the camera, image metadata, time code, temperature, exposure settings, and a color profile, and also a thumbnail or a proxy sequence in the same chip, which you can send it for, use it for rushes or give it for offline also. Raw files don't have any color space, but you can, in the viewing devices, you can add a LUT and see how this will be if you do a color grade or add a LUT. Red cameras have a red color spaces, and the Sony F65 RAW has its own gamut map and ARRI and others. Dailies. Dailies or rushes or the footage comes from the camera. They are converted as proxy files for offline editing. So each camera, when you shoot in RAW, the RED has its own R3D format, Sony has its own format, and ARRI has its own format. So ARRI has ARI format and also gives us an MOV format also. So simultaneously, you can get a low resolution format from the camera, and also you can also send it to a DIT or a digital imaging technician on the set who can take those log files, which will be flat and desaturated, and use a camera LUT from the camera or a very similar basic color grade, make it as a low resolution MP4 files or an MOV file, and then can be sent it to the director or the cinematographer to see. The same files will be also have a time code embedded on it, just to make a note of what is the shot number, the metadata information also will be embedded, so that it will be easier when the same shot or footage can be located from the raw file. So this typically is a frame without LUT, directly whenever you get it from your camera. So when you add LUT, this will be the result. So coming to color correction versus color grading. Color correction and color grading are similar, but the process is different. Color correction is a singular process that involves making adjustments of a shot or a multiple cameras. So each camera might have some variations. During action shots, we use the main camera, which is the RED or a Sony camera. The action shots may include small spaces where Canon cameras will be used. So to maintain an even look between all these cameras or different cameras, you have to do the basic correction, which involves exposure, white balance, and contrast and ISO levels. So these would make it even, give an even look, which will be the first step. Once your footage is color corrected, then you bring it for color grading. Color grading is more of a creative process. You might also say, whenever a digital imaging technician gives or adds a LUT, that is also a way of color correction. So when color grading is more of a creative process, it manipulates more tones, gives a visual tone to your shot. Grading is more of a brush to paint. These include shot matching, removing objects or correction. Shape marks will be used for different areas to highlight. Adding a cinematic look to enhance your story or a particular scene. So color grade involves two more steps called the primary and the secondary color grade. The primary color grade steps involves manipulating lift, the shadow level, gain, the overall brightness, gamma, the density of the midtone levels, saturation, and the hue. A typical primary color grade will be of lifting the shadow level. The left image will be your source image. The right image will be the manipulated image. Then the gamma or the midtones will be adjusted to get a realistic depth. Then increasing or adjusting your highlight areas. And finally the luminance value. So this is a primary grade where it will have an overall correction of your image or bringing it to a certain color tone. Secondary color grading is more towards affecting a specific area of an image. Usually there will be a mask or a key or a shape which is drawn to mark your region of interest where you need to add an extra color or tone it down. Any of the usual parameters can be used to achieve this. Isolating a region of interest and applying a color grade. Here I have actually selected the midtones of the face and the skin and manipulated and brought it to a certain tone. Whenever you do color grading, you have to analyze the source content from the camera and matching it along with the multiple cameras are also used. Bringing them in RAW or without any generation law will be the first step. You shouldn't compress it to any other format when you bring it to color grade. You have to formulate a workflow based on the source content and to achieve your finally delivery method. So usually a DI person will be giving different output for different delivery method. One for the film, one for HD broadcast, one for OTT delivery, web channels also. So you need to understand how your source is going to be manipulated, work, color correction finally, and finally giving it to different delivery methods which has its own color space attached to it. Any prelet which comes from the camera should be only used to normalize or balance if multiple cameras use. That said, you shouldn't also, when you're shooting in RAW, you should be very careful not to embed your camera LUT on your footage. These should be used only for your secondary or your proxy formats. These are the basic steps which you should consider while grading. Balance the shot, adjust the whites and black areas to achieve balance between shots, because nature can be different. When you shoot one scene and the other scene, the sun will be moved from left to right or top to bottom, or it can be an afternoon while you shoot your second shot. So your shadows will be strong. So you need to achieve a balance between each and every shot. Matching shot to shot. Finally, stylizing your scene according and creating a look. If it is an emotional scene, you can have harsh colors. If it is a pleasant or a romantic scene, you can add even more pleasant hues of colors. And in action shots, there will be more contrast and more red and other contrasting shades. Enhance the materials by isolating areas of interest. Here, I have seen people using multiple masks and everything. So each and every shot, if the camera is moving all around the place, it will be very difficult for you to mask each and every item and do this. So create key structures of your see how you can proceed. Don't just open one shot and try to make the same effect on each and every shot, because each shot to shot might differ. The camera might differ. So one shot, if you make it look good, it should also follow for the rest of the scene in the film. Otherwise, it look different and it won't match. So whatever color grading you're trying to achieve, keep it simple and at the same time effective throughout the scene. A colorist in the digital era is responsible for doing all mediums. So your content and workflow should be future ready also. So if you have a workflow designed for raw format, but for now you are just using it for YouTube, your film can be finally be selected uh, for theatrical release. So you should also have a workflow design for a theatrical release also. So the same result can be achieved in theater. So keep in mind your workflow should be simple and effective for different mediums also. There is some history for news and history of key milestones of DI. In 1990, Rescue Sunderdawn was the first full-length film recorded in film and from digital files. Walt Disney had its own software to do this. In 1993, Snow White and Seven Dwarfs was scanned in 4K and re-released. In 1998, Pleasantville was a majority in the film was scanned and processed and recorded digitally in 2K. In that film, the main characters will be pulled into a black and white TV episode where half the characters will be black and white and the main characters will be in color. So in 1998 itself, they had a technique and major portion of visual effects were done. In 2000, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was the first Hollywood full-length film where DI was used. In 2004, Spider-Man was scanned. And in India also, we had major breakthroughs in DI. And if you see, as early as 1989, there was a film called Raja Chinna Roja, a Tamil film, Rajinikanth's film, where animated cartoons were used in a song. This song was used in a telecine process where images were grabbed frame by frame and literally was given as printed in sheets and then given to 2D animation people, and cartoon characters were drawn and were composited separately. So this animation was done by Ram Mohan Biographics in Mumbai. So in 2004, Kaki, Hindi movie, was the first full-length film which underwent the DI process. The same year, Vanam Vasapadam was P.C. Sriram's third film as director, was the first motion film used in high-definition digital technology. I was part of the film as a colorist. Here is my details. You can contact me. And now we are open for questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your words. Now the platform is open for your queries or doubts. You can ask your questions either by unmuting yourself or in the chat box. So we have some questions in the chat box. Can you please answer those?
Yes. Okay. Is LUT is a must in today's camera? Sir, LUT can be used in a camera.
Venki, my first question is, is LUT camera specific, or cameraman specific, or a display unit specific?
It is main of a display unit specific, sir. It is only to inside a camera. It is only to show how it looks with a particular color space embedded on it. So whether a camera is used to producing raw images will look very flat. So a cinematographer or a director might not appreciate looking at a very flat image. So they have a camera lit on top of it just to see how it might look with a color space, or how the final result would be.
Okay. My second question is, I have because I'm quite new to this color grading, I have quite a wagon of questions. Is LUT must in today's camera?
No, I usually don't use a LUT. I still think there is a creative process behind it, so I would always avoid a LUT while shooting and get the raw image for me to create a creative process on the timeline.
Okay. My next question
And
is, yeah, please proceed.
yeah, I'm reading. Next question is color
Yeah, my
grading
next
must for.
question is, yeah, for color correction, which software is the best one? Because um, um, the bigger companies and the international companies will have capacity or a budget to buy a very high-end equipments. But for a film, for a single camera filmmaker or a self filmmaker, which software will be a good one to begin with for color correction?
So I learned half of my color correction only through Photoshop, because every day I will. It has been routine for me to take any kind of pictures, or even from mobile, or even from a camera or something, bring it to Photoshop and try manipulating those colors. For starters, now Resolve has a free software which you can manipulate till HD images. So Resolve would be it's free. So it will, gradually you can start learning from it. For me, Photoshop was the first software for color grading. Now you can also take an image from your shot, color correct it, and take it as a LUT and embed it to any kind of software. So now the latest version of Photoshop can create LUTs. Whatever adjustments you do for color, you can export it as a LUT and use it in any kind of software.
Okay, thank you. And I have one final question, which, from the point of view of the students, which is a highly paid job, a 3D animator, or a color corrector, or a digital matte artist, or a VFX compositor? Because so that the present day generation, they think in terms of money before entering into a profession.
So for me, working in any kind of company which does it, if I get a salary, it's highly paid job. Individuals don't get paid much.
Right, but but anyhow, in your opinion, because some of the from some corners I have heard that a VFX compositor is the highly paid person.
It varies, sir. It varies, but it also varies in each and every job you do. See, I personally, the more you get paid, the more responsibility it is there. So when you do a DI, you make sure the content from the beginning to the end, it is in your hands. So the responsibility is more, and between whatever jobs you said, DI person would be getting a highest paid job.
Okay, thank you. Now it's over to all other participants.
There are
So
questions.
yeah, Adarsh Kurian has asked how the timeline color space managed when we need multiple output formats. Okay, so what we do is we actually someone has to speaker is on. Okay. Uh, there is a terminology which I haven't introduced in this workshop, which is much more deeper. It is the ACES color space. See what colors, this actually manages different mediums of footages, like from multiple cameras, and makes it as a linear color format. Like what I said, like how you white balance and do a color correction of various multi-cameras, you make it as a single timeline. Now you have the same timeline or a project in different color spaces. So one color space would be output for theater, one would for OTT, and one is for broadcast. So whatever color manipulation you do, a final LUT manipulation will be done for different kinds of releases. So it won't bother you when you're doing your color correction. It will all land up in a certain color space, and then you add output specific LUTs or bring it into different color space projects, which will finally deliver to whatever output formats you want. So this might look very complicated, but this workflow is very easier to manipulate your color corrections, and finally you change your output format. So then you won't have to worry about each and every stage in your workspace or your timeline.
I think others is having other questions, sir.
Yeah,
Others, please. Others, please.
how the film is edited in 24 FPS and change
Can I
into
ask one more
25
question
FPS.
regarding the same one, the one before?
Yeah.
So if I'm working in Resolve, I'm using the DaVinci YRGB color in the color management. So which is the best timeline color space for me? In output color space, I can choose DCI-P3, Rec. 7 or anything for the output. So which should be my timeline color space?
Your timeline color space would be. So what have you shot in? You're muted, Adarsh.
Yeah, I have muted him, sir.
Okay.
Others, after
So-
speaking, just mute your mic. Yeah, that's all. Now your mic is muted. Others.
Okay. So for example, if I am shooting in a Canon log, my footage is in Canon log.
Okay.
Okay.
So
And
I would.
And I am using a Rec. 709 monitor for my reference. Okay. So is the timeline color space should match with my reference monitor or for my output? That's my doubt.
You can mute your. So when you are working, it should actually work with your monitor calibration. See, because your monitor is finally going to be the result. You can't do a DCI P3 color correction with your Rec. 709 monitor. So you should actually, if your intention is to give a theatrical output, you should work on a DCI P3 color space monitor or a calibrated monitor which has a DCI P3 color space. Or I think you should undergo the ACES color space management in Resolve. I think that option is not there in the free version. It's only works with your studio version. So there will be a manipulation of your color space of your timeline. So it will have a workflow specific where you can have DCI P3 and work on a Rec. 709 monitor. So that will be apt for you. But now I think you should work only for an output which your calibrated monitor is intended for, because it would be totally different if you work on a DCI compliant output in a Rec. 709 monitor.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
So how is the film edited in 24 FPS for theater and can be changed to 25 FPS for broadcast? Earlier we had a um it is just a pull down of or an adding a frame. So finally what we do is we take the whole content. Earlier we used to have hardware devices which would change the frame rate of the content. It's called as a frame rate converter. So it will be a signal from tape, one tape, or an output, or finally connected to a 25 project. Nowadays, what they do is they actually, if it's in data format, if it's in 24, they create a 25 project, get in the 24 content, and finally export it to a 25 framed output or a output format. So if it's in tape, you can do it as from a hardware point of view converted. If it's in software, you create a project in 25 fps, get the 24 fps project, and there will be some conversions which are made, retimer conversions, where you can use interpolation. Will actually create a duplicate frame for the 25th frame. If you don't use interpolation, there will be a static frame or a duplicate frame created at the end of each 24th frame. So you should choose between these options when converting it into 25.
Sir, other than the DaVinci Resolve, what are the other software used for color correction in our film industry?
Resolve actually is the starting point. It has a free software, and the highest possible software is which I use is Nucoda, and then Baselight, and nowadays even Adobe Premiere is also used in the Adobe family. There are much more smaller and intermediate softwares like Mystica, and there's one more called Pablo, and which are also used. So the upfront major softwares are Baselight and Nucoda, and Resolve has a studio version, and if you have a better hardware and a software, I think even the smallest softwares would attend to it. Basically, if my intention or to do a best grading is to whatever format you use, your workflow should have a software which can take in your source content and give your output content. If your software matches these two, then you can use any kind of software.
Thank you, sir. Justin, you can ask question now.
So, which is the easiest and affordable software for a beginner, for an amateur to color grade?
I think this will be Resolve, which has a free software, and it can also run in simple laptop.
Yes, sir. I'm asking. Many software has a payment for that software. So, which can be more less payment for affording those softwares.
If you want to have a good output or a premium output for theater, I think you have to subscribe for or pay at least for the subscription of the software. The free softwares will have some kind of limitations. So if you're okay with the limitations, you can use those. Otherwise, you need a subscription. Our softwares are now subscription based. So you can at least get a subscription for a certain period of time and finish your project.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Adarsh has, can I move a Resolve project to a Baselight project? My idea is to do a base grade at home studio and do the final correction in that use it. You can what you have to do is you can build your timeline reel by reel or whatever the duration is for. You can export the same project as an EDL and then confirm your timeline again in your DA suite. For this, what you have to do is, from the basic point of editing, you should have your shots has to be the same name has to be transformed. You can't just drag and drop your content into the timeline because that would change your time code and your timeline and your short name. If you have gone through all the priorities, like when you have transcoded your content in a similar name and given as proxy frames the names, everything, then you can export an EDL information. EDL is an edit decision list from your timeline, which will have all the informations and the grading informations you have used. Then you take the same information, build your timeline in a DA suite and work finely on that. Or else what, if you are going to have only a MOV file of a HD resolution, then you do a full grade and take your content as a uncompressed format, MOV format, as first half and second half, and then go again and build your timeline in your DA suite and grade it. So these actually you will have to, the transitions and everything will be different there. You can manipulate that. So I would suggest that you build your transitions in your DA table. Just take cut shots with handle length in your edit timeline and then take it to your DA suite and add effects. You don't do any effects in your Resolve. You just do the basic grade and then take the timeline to your DA grade.
Sir, if my base grade in the Resolve will be similar in Baselite also, if I am doing a base grade in my Resolve, will the EDL carry those informations also when I open it in Baselite?
You can convert it as a AAF project. You can export a AAF project, so which will have the color information also, or you can also export as CDL. CDL means
the Resolve AFF will support in Baselite also, so that I can open it there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sunil Kumar sir.
I would just ask, it's a very general question from the point of view of many of the participants. Because you started as a visual communication student and later developed into a cleanup artist, then 2D animation, 3D animation, VFX compositor, digital matte artist, and all. So what will be your advice the present world or the present day visual communication student? Because it's quite, I have heard from many people that only the Bachelor of Fine Arts people can get into this VFX field, and in color grading field, people who have some knowledge on physics can get into. Is it really right, or so? What will be your advice to a visual communication student?
Sir, I was fortunate to have gone through this stage in my college, because when I did my visual communication design in Government College of Arts and Crafts, we had a preparatory course for 2 years in which we learned drawing, painting, sculpting, texturing, textile design, everything in the first 2 years. And then we were able to choose a 3-year master degree for the main degree. So nowadays, each and every college has a multimedia course, but I would like at least a 6-month course included in it for drawing and painting, where the students will learn common perspectives and compositions, not to do major drawing or painting, but to know these theories in perspective and compositions. These will actually help them, and color theory, these will help them to build and learn more and in an effective way when they are given a camera or visuals, any other visual medium is being taught to them. So when my nephew actually joined Viscom in Loyola College, I advised him and sent him to a drawing class for a year. So which actually helped him to learn the perception of light, the perspective, composition, and everything. And then he could develop more knowledge in his visual communication design classes. So at least a 6-month training in this is needed for each and every person in real life, how composition works and lighting and everything, so that they can develop more of their knowledge.
Any other questions?
As a person who worked in both film and digital, how to
Others you can
compare
ask.
both experience? Okay. In film, workflow was much easier for us because digital world is making things even more complicated. Every day new formats are coming in, and everybody thinks everything can be done in post. And see, just imagine when you are shooting in film, till the last minute of the film processing, you wouldn't know what is going to happen and how the picture is, and then you begin to manipulate. Here you know what is going to happen, and in digital world, you the new people think, oh, it is just digital, we can shoot endlessly and do many more corrections. But there is also a problem of storage and data and how much of value is being done. So I still think film workflow was actually a very more tedious process and safe process. Digital film process, now people are getting some good knowledge to do what and how to do it, but it is still more difficult, and people should be updated every day for the digital cinema workflow. You should be updated, otherwise you will get lost.
Any questions? Krishna sir, we wish to see you, sir.
And
If there are no other issues, can you switch on your video? Yeah.
yeah. So it is good to actually do this workshop, and I think we'll have couple of more workshops which is even more specific to the cinema workflow. So we should not stop from this workshop alone. We should do more, learn more.
If there are no other questions, Parvati, please.
Okay. Now let me call upon Anamika S. Nair to deliver vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. The task rested upon me is to deliver the vote of thanks. On behalf of the Department of Communication and Media Studies, first of all, my sincere thanks to God Almighty for making today's event a grand success. I give a really heartfelt vote of thanks to our chief guest, Mr. A. Venkatakrishnan sir, who spent his busiest time gracing the occasion. Today, we had the opportunity to hear your thoughts on color theory and color concepts in cinema. And I'm sure that this will surely help us all in our future ventures. A special thanks to Mr. P.V. Sunilkumar for rendering his time. I extend my warm gratitude to Professor V. Vijaykumar sir, Father Sobi Thomas, Dr. Michael sir, and all other faculty members to organize this valuable session. And finally, I thank all the participants for their active participation. Thank you everyone once again for making it a great success.
Thank you, Venkateshwar sir and Sunilkumar sir. Special thanks to Sunilkumar sir for arranging this wonderful session by Venkateshwar sir. Then I think we can arrange a session here in the campus itself if everything is okay here. Thank you
Sure,
so
sir.
much.
I would love to have a real practical session also where I can see the students and deliver an individual experience to each and every one of them also. So
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for your valuable time, sir. You are spending with us.
Thank you.
Sunilkumar
It's,
sir.
uh,
Yes, sir, please.
it was an honor, and thanks to Sunil sir to initiate this workshop.
Sunilkumar sir, your mic is muted.
Yeah, it's getting the youngsters to meet the masters should be our aim in imparting the real education. I believe in that. The real education it should be more practical than going by your syllabi, going by your two papers and your answer sheets. So meeting the masters, I even now I attend all the classes by masters in cinematography, VFX, and the color grading, audio, everything, whatever the subject, whatever webinar I hear, I immediately attend to it. Because gathering knowledge at this younger age is much more required because you cannot learn much later in the years to come. Okay, every day when the process, when the development comes, you have to learn. That is another thing. But learning the basics, you can do it only at the younger